They were once your world, now they won't even call. It's terrifying when someone who was once your entire world suddenly vanishes. No goodbye, no warning, just silence. And somehow, that silence screams louder than every fight you ever had. You check your phone 100 times a day, not for hope, but for proof that you still matter, but nothing comes. And that emptiness, it starts to feel like a mirror, reflecting back all the parts of you that never felt enough. This isn't just heartbreak, this is identity collapse, because they weren't just someone you loved, they were the place you went to feel like you existed, and now that they're gone, you don't even know who you are anymore. That's where transformation begins. When silence becomes the loudest pain, there's a moment when you stare at your phone, and it's not just about missing a message, it's about what the silence means. Because when they stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up, it doesn't feel like absence, it feels like erasure, and that silence, it becomes a scream, a cruel echo that says, you weren't worth holding on to. You start to question everything. Did I do something wrong? Was I ever really important to them? Why can they move on like I never mattered, while I'm still stuck here, drowning in memories? This isn't just about losing them, it's about losing the version of you that existed when they loved you, when they looked at you like you were enough, when their presence filled the cracks in your soul and made you feel seen. And now every second of their silence feels like rejection, not just of your texts, but of your identity, your worth, your story. You walk through your day pretending you're okay. You smile when people ask how you're doing, but inside you're screaming, because no one prepared you for this level of emotional withdrawal. No one told you that when people leave quietly, they don't just walk away from your life, they haunt it. You keep replaying everything. The last conversation, the last smile, the last time they looked at you like you mattered. And that loop becomes a prison. You're not just heartbroken, you're stuck mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Here's what no one talks about. We don't grieve the person. We grieve who we were when they loved us. We grieve the identity we built around their attention. And when that's ripped away, we don't just lose them, we lose our reflection. That's why silence hurts so damn much, because it forces you to face yourself, without the noise, without the distraction, without the illusion. It's in that silence that truth starts to whisper. You begin to hear your own voice, underneath the chaos, and at first that voice is scared, fragile, angry, but it's yours. This is the breaking point, not because you're falling apart, but because your old identity is. And that's the doorway to something bigger. Because pain, when faced, becomes power. Silence, when honored, becomes strength. And heartbreak, when understood, becomes your origin story. So don't run from the silence. Stand in it. Let it scream. Let it burn. Because what rises from those ashes is you, the real you. Not the one who needed their call to feel alive, but the one who remembers, you were always enough, even when they forgot. The illusion of forever, we believe them. When they said, I'm not going anywhere, when they smiled and painted pictures of a future with us in it, we didn't just hear their words, we built a world around them, a home in our mind, on our heart, and we called it forever. But here's the brutal truth, forever was never promised. We just needed it to be. Because when you're starved for love, when someone finally sees you, understands you, holds space for your mess, you cling not because you're weak, but because for a moment they made the chaos inside feel calm. You built castles of certainty on quicksand. You saw forever in a fragile moment, and now it all collapsed without warning. They're gone, and what hurts more than the loss is realizing they let you build a dream while secretly planning their exit. But let's be honest, they never really said forever. We just filled in the blanks. We read too much into late-night confessions, hands held tightly, and future talk that felt real in the moment but wasn't anchored in commitment. It wasn't just them lying. We lied to ourselves because the dream felt better than reality. Because the illusion was safer than the uncertainty of being alone. That's the danger of forever. It makes you ignore red flags. It makes you shrink to fit someone else's idea of love. It makes you stay when your soul is screaming to run, because you're not chasing love anymore. You're chasing the story you wanted it to be. And when it ends, you don't just mourn the relationship, You mourn the future you thought was guaranteed. The wedding they mentioned, the trips you planned, the quiet mornings and gray-haired laughter you imagined. None of it was real, but your investment was. So now you're left holding the pieces of a puzzle that never existed outside your heart. It feels like betrayal, because it is. Not just theirs, but your own. But here's the breakthrough. This isn't the death of your story, it's the death of a fantasy that was never strong enough to hold your truth. Let it burn. Let the illusion fall apart, because only when you stop chasing forever can you start creating freedom. Freedom to choose you. Freedom to build a life that doesn't hinge on someone else staying. Freedom to stop begging people to love you and start demanding that you love yourself enough to walk away when they don't. Forever didn't end. It just changed shape. And now that forever belongs to you. Why it cuts so deep. Psychology of detachment. This isn't just about heartbreak, it's about identity collapse. Because when someone becomes your world, losing them doesn't feel like losing a relationship, it feels like losing yourself. That's why you can't just move on. It's not about forgetting memories, it's about rebuilding your identity from the ashes of who you were with them. Psychologists call it identity fusion, when two people merge so deeply that one can't be separated from the other without trauma. And when they leave, they don't just walk away with their bags, they take parts of you you didn't know you'd given away. That's why it feels like you're dying, because part of you is. Your brain registers emotional rejection in the same regions as physical pain. A breakup, a betrayal, a sudden silence. It lights up your neural pathways like a burn or a broken bone, only this one's invisible. And that makes it harder to heal, because no one can see your wounds. They just see you struggling and say, get over it. But they don't realize you're grieving the death of a version of yourself that only existed with that person. Then there's emotional enmeshment, when your needs, dreams, moods, even your self-worth became dependent on their presence. You stopped being whole, and you started becoming half of something else. And the most dangerous trap, trauma bonding. When love is laced with chaos, highs and lows, pain and comfort, your brain mistakes inconsistency for intimacy. You get addicted to the roller coaster, not because it's healthy, but because it's familiar. So when they leave, it's not just sadness, it's withdrawal. Your body screams, your mind replays, your heart bargains with ghosts. You don't just miss them, you miss the version of you that only felt seen, loved, or alive through them. But here's what no one tells you. This pain isn't a punishment. It's a wake-up call. It's your mind begging you to reclaim the power you outsourced, to detach not just from them, but from the illusion that you needed them to feel whole. Because the truth is, anyone who can leave you without explanation was never qualified to complete you. They weren't your other half. They were a reflection of an unmet part of you, a mirror for wounds you now have a chance to heal. So no, it's not just a breakup. It's an identity rebirth. A painful, beautiful unraveling that strips you of dependency and forces you to meet yourself at rock bottom, raw, real, and ready. And that is where real power begins. You gave too much, and they took it all. You didn't just love them, you poured into them. Every word, every gesture, every ounce of your soul, you handed it over like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. You gave when you were tired. You gave when you were hurting. You gave when they stopped giving back. And you kept telling yourself, if I just love them a little harder, maybe they'll stay. But they didn't. And now you're left staring at the wreckage of a connection that consumed you. Not because they were powerful, but because you abandoned yourself to keep them comfortable. That's the truth nobody wants to admit. The deepest betrayal wasn't theirs. It was yours. You betrayed yourself every time you said yes when your soul screamed no. Every time you made space for them while shrinking yourself. They didn't take your power. You handed it over, quietly, slowly, piece by piece, because you believed that being enough meant giving more patience, more chances, more of your identity, until there was nothing left to recognize in the mirror. And the worst part? They never even asked for that version of you. They just took what you gave, like a starving man at a feast. No gratitude, no awareness, just hunger. And you You confuse that hunger for love. But here's what you must understand. People can only take what you're willing to give. They didn't break your boundaries. You never had any. And I get it. You didn't want to lose them. So you sacrificed parts of yourself. But in doing so you lost you. You became a shell of the person you were meant to be. Full of love, full of fire, but emptied out by your own hands, in the name of love that was never mutual. Now here's your power. You can take it all back, not by hating them, not by playing the victim, but by finally seeing your role in the pain, by realizing that the person who needs your love the most is you. It's time to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. It's time to stop proving your worth to those who were never capable of seeing it. The version of you that overgave, that version was built on fear, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. But the version rising now, that one's built on truth, on dignity, on power. Let them take what they took, because what they didn't get is the version of you that's about to rise, and that version is no longer up for sale. The haunting power of what if I had said it differently? What if I had just walked away sooner? What if I mattered more to them? What if I was the problem? You see, what if is not a question, it's a prison. It's the echo that never shuts up. It doesn't help you heal, it keeps the wound open. Every night it crawls into your bed, whispering doubts, rerunning scenes, forcing you to relive pain that's already happened. It plays tricks on your mind. You start rewriting history with fake happy endings that never existed. You idealize people who destroyed you. You romanticize the chaos. You convince yourself that if you had just done one thing differently, maybe, just maybe, they would have stayed. But here's the truth you're avoiding. No amount of different words, actions, or sacrifices would have fixed someone who was already committed to losing you. What if is seductive, because it gives you a false sense of control. It lets you believe this was your fault, because if it's your fault, then maybe you can fix it. But the reality is more brutal and freeing. Some people leave because they never had the capacity to stay. Some stories end not because you were broken, but because they never deserved a front row seat to your life in the first place. What if is how we torture ourselves when we're not ready to let go of who we used to be. It's how we avoid stepping into the unknown, because regret feels safer than rebuilding. But you cannot move forward while dragging a corpse of the past behind you. You cannot heal while trying to rearrange the rubble. There is no version of your past where they love you the way you deserved. There is only the now, and what you do with it. So stop negotiating with ghosts. Stop running mental marathons trying to earn peace from people who were never capable of giving it. They made their choice. Now you have to make yours. To stop haunting your own future with memories of someone who didn't stay. Here's the antidote to what if. Even if they never apologize, even if you never get closure, even if they're happy without you, you will rise. Not because the past makes sense, but because your future finally will. Not because they came back, but because you came home to yourself. Let what if die, so you can finally live. The haunting power of what if. What if I had said it differently? What if I had just walked away sooner? What if I mattered more to them? What if I was the problem? You see, what if is not a question, it's a prison. It's the echo that never shuts up. It doesn't help you heal, it keeps the wound open. Every night it crawls into your bed, whispering doubts, rerunning scenes, forcing you to relive pain that's already happened. It plays tricks on your mind. You start rewriting history with fake happy endings that never existed. You idealize people who destroyed you. You romanticize the chaos. You convince yourself that if you had just done one thing differently, maybe, just maybe, they would have stayed. But here's the truth you're avoiding. No amount of different words, actions, or sacrifices would have fixed someone who was already committed to losing you. What if is seductive, because it gives you a false sense of control. It lets you believe this was your fault. Because if it's your fault, then maybe you can fix it. But the reality is more brutal and freeing. Some people leave because they never had the capacity to stay. Some stories end not because you were broken, but because they never deserved a front row seat to your life in the first place. What if is how we torture ourselves when we're not ready to let go of who we used to be. It's how we avoid stepping into the unknown, because regret feels safer than rebuilding. But you cannot move forward while dragging a corpse of the past behind you. You cannot heal while trying to rearrange the rubble. There is no version of your past where they love you the way you deserved. There is only the now, and what you do with it. So stop negotiating with ghosts. Stop running mental marathons trying to earn peace from people who were never capable of giving it. They made their choice. Now you have to make yours. To stop haunting your own future with memories of someone who didn't stay. Here's the antidote to what if. Even if they never apologize, even if you never get closure, even if they're happy without you, will rise. Not because the past makes sense, but because your future finally will. Not because they came back, but because you came home to yourself. Let what if die, so you can finally live. Grieving someone who's still alive. How do you mourn someone who didn't die, but just walked away? How do you grieve someone who's still breathing, still posting, still laughing, just not with you? This is a pain few people talk about. There's no funeral, no eulogy, no closure, just an empty silence, and the cruel reminder that they chose that silence. You see them living their life. You see the pictures, the updates, the smiles, and every post feels like a punch. Look how fine I am without you. And what kills you isn't just their absence, it's the fact that they're still here, just not here for you. This grief is invisible. No one sends flowers. No one says I'm sorry for your loss, because technically they're not gone. But emotionally, they've vanished, and it messes with your head, because the mind doesn't know how to let go of someone still walking the earth. You keep waiting for a message. You keep thinking maybe they'll come back. You keep holding space in your heart for a ghost that won't rest. But listen closely. This kind of grief is a test of self-worth. Because the longer you mourn someone who isn't mourning you, the more you abandon yourself. They chose not to show up. They chose not to call. They chose not to care. You didn't lose them. They lost someone who would have given them the world. It's time to flip the script. You're not grieving them anymore. You're grieving the version of you who tolerated breadcrumbs. You're grieving your old self. The one who waited for love from someone emotionally bankrupt. The one who bent over backwards for people who couldn't even meet you halfway. Let that version of you go. Mourn them once. Mourn them fully. Then bury the fantasy. Because your healing begins the moment you stop refreshing their page and start rebuilding your own life. They didn't leave a void. They left space. Space that can now be filled with people who choose you, see you, and stay. Let them go. Not because you're over it. Not because it doesn't hurt. But because your peace is worth more than replaying pain they're not even thinking about. You don't have to hate them, but you sure as hell don't have to keep bleeding for them. Grieve them like a storm that passed. Then rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and unshakably you. You're not weak. You were just human. You keep calling yourself weak. Why did I let them treat me like that? Why couldn't I walk away sooner? Why did I care so much? But let's tell the truth. You weren't weak. You were human. You loved with your whole heart. You believed in connection. You gave the benefit of the doubt. You stayed, not because you lacked strength, but because you held on to hope. That doesn't make you pathetic. That makes you real. And that version of you, the one who gave, forgave, and tried again, that wasn't weakness. That was courage wearing a bleeding heart. The world loves to praise the unbothered, the cold, the detached, the emotionless. But you felt it all. You cared. And that made you brave. You risked vulnerability in a world that confuses numbness with power. You showed up fully in a connection that eventually disappeared. And yes, it broke you, but it also showed you the depths of your own soul. Because you loved, deeply, fiercely, fully. And when it fell apart, it didn't mean you were stupid. It meant you were alive. You don't heal by becoming colder. You heal by realizing this pain was never proof that something was wrong with you. It was proof that something right within you was violated. You didn't lose your worth when they left. You didn't lose your value when they stopped caring. You were worthy then. You are worthy now. You're not broken. You're awakening. Let go of the shame. Let go of the guilt. You're not crazy for loving hard. You're not broken for feeling it all. You were just being human in a moment that required more maturity than they had. And now you rise. Not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by accepting that you survived something that tried to hollow you out. You rise by owning your story. All of it. Even the chapters where you stayed too long. Even the parts where you lost yourself loving someone who didn't know how to receive it. Because that version of you, the one who felt it all, that version didn't fail. That version just learned. And now you know. Your heart isn't a flaw. It's your superpower. You are not weak. You're healing. And there is nothing more powerful than a soul that refuses to turn bitter, even after it's been shattered. Why you must stop chasing closure. They left without an explanation. No goodbye, no apology, no answers. And now you're stuck, waiting, replaying every moment, hoping you'll finally understand why. But here's the truth. Most people never tell you. Closure is not something they give you. It's something you give yourself. You think if they just told you the truth, you'd finally move on. If they just admitted they were wrong, or explained why they changed, then the pain would finally make sense. Then the silence would finally feel complete. But what you don't realize is, chasing closure is chasing a ghost. It keeps you tethered to the one who broke you. It keeps your healing dependent on someone who already proved they don't care enough to offer peace. You're asking for clarity from someone who couldn't even offer honesty when it mattered. You're seeking resolution from someone who walked away from responsibility. That's not strength. That's emotional slavery. Sometimes people disappear because they don't want to face what they did. Sometimes they lie to themselves so deeply, they can't give you the truth, because they don't even know it. Sometimes the silence isn't your punishment. It's their cowardice. And yet, here you are, holding on to the idea that their explanation will fix your soul. It won't. Because what you're truly craving isn't words. It's relief. You want the pain to end. You want the confusion to make sense. But closure doesn't come wrapped in their apology. It comes when you decide you deserve to be free, with or without their permission. Stop asking them to validate your pain. Stop waiting for them to give you something they're not capable of. They made their choice. Now it's time to make yours. You don't need their honesty to heal. You don't need their guilt to feel justified. You don't need them to close the door, because the door is already closed. The moment they walked away without looking back. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. A decision to no longer hold yourself hostage for answers that may never come. A decision to walk away with your dignity intact, even if you're still bleeding. A decision to say, I may not understand why, but I will not destroy myself trying to. Let that be enough. Let peace matter more than clarity. Let your healing matter more than their explanation. You don't need closure. You need liberation. And that begins the moment you stop chasing what broke you, and start choosing what builds you. The identity crisis you didn't see coming. You didn't just lose a person. You lost the version of yourself that only existed with them. You see, when someone becomes your world, your identity gets wrapped around them like vines on a wall. Every thought, every dream, every decision somehow ties back to them. Who you were was us. And now that they're gone, you're not just grieving them, you're grieving you. That's why it feels like the ground has disappeared beneath your feet, because it has. Your reflection doesn't look familiar, your voice sounds hollow. You wake up and don't even know what version of yourself to be today, the one who used to laugh with them, or the one who now cries alone. This is the identity crisis no one warned you about. But listen closely, it's not the end of you, it's the beginning. Because the version of you that existed in their shadow was never the whole you. It was a version edited for their comfort, their needs, their attention. You bent, you broke, you dimmed your light to make them shine. Now, you rebuild. You rebuild without asking who you need to be loved. You rebuild without shrinking yourself to stay chosen. You rebuild without seeking approval from someone who couldn't see your worth. This is your rebirth. Raw, terrifying, beautiful. Yes, you'll feel lost. Yes, you'll feel empty. But that emptiness is freedom in disguise. It's the blank page of your next chapter. Not defined by heartbreak but by truth. You get to ask yourself questions you never dared to ask before. Who am I without them? What do I want? What do I believe in? What makes me feel alive? And you'll answer them, not overnight, not all at once, but with intention. This isn't about becoming stronger so you can win them back. This is about becoming whole, so you never lose yourself again. Because the next version of you won't need to chase love to feel worthy, won't need to morph to be accepted, won't need to break to feel needed. You'll know who you are, and that unshakable self, that powerful core, will attract everything that's real, and repel everything that's not. So yes, this is an identity crisis, but it's also an identity awakening. And the question is no longer, who were you with them? It's, who will you finally become without them? The comeback begins in the dark. You don't rise when it's easy, you rise when it's dark, when the world is silent, when no one is watching, clapping, or saving you. That's when the comeback begins. Not in some perfect moment, not when you finally get over it, but in that brutal, lonely hour when you whisper, I can't do this anymore, and then you do it anyway. That's real power, the kind built in the shadows, the kind no one sees until it's undeniable. You've cried enough, you've begged enough, you've broken in ways even you can't explain. But here's what matters now. You're still breathing. That means something. That means everything. Because every day you choose not to give up. Every time you stand when your knees are shaking, you're not just surviving, you're rebuilding. It starts small. You drink water instead of skipping meals. You stretch instead of staying curled up in bed. You journal your truth instead of texting someone who no longer sees your value. These are micro decisions. They look small, but they're revolutionary. Each one is a vote for your future self. Each one is a seed in your comeback. And no one will applaud you for these moments, but you will feel it. Your soul will feel it. And that silent knowing, I'm rising even now, that becomes your fuel. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to move, honestly, consistently, fiercely. There's no magic fix, no secret shortcut, but there's ritual. There's healing in movement, in breath, in presence, in reclaiming your time, your space, your power. Because here's the truth. No one's coming to rescue you, but you can return to yourself, piece by piece, choice by choice. You will outgrow this pain, not by escaping it, but by standing inside it and choosing to create something new. So light a candle, not to banish the dark, but to prove to yourself you can still create light. That's how the comeback begins, not in noise, not in perfection, but in the quiet decision to try again. The darkness will not define you. Your choices inside it will. Let them be a lesson, not a lifeline. They were a chapter, not the whole story. Read that again, because right now, some part of you is still holding on, not to them, but to who you were with them. The way they made you feel seen, the way your identity wrapped around their attention, the illusion that without them, you're somehow less. But let's get brutally honest. If someone can walk away from you, if they can disappear without explanation, if they can look at the wreckage and still not call, they were never your lifeline. They were a mirror, a painful, necessary one. They showed you where you abandon yourself, where you make excuses for red flags, where you confuse attachment with love. It hurts, but it's not for nothing. Because now, you're not just healing, you're waking up. You've been living like they were oxygen, but they were a lesson. And if you don't learn it, you'll repeat it. Here's the lesson. Never outsource your self-worth to someone else's presence. Don't build your home in someone else's approval. They are not your definition. They are your reminder. A reminder that your love is real, that your heart is deep, and that you deserve someone who sees that and stays. Not someone you have to chase into clarity. You don't need closure. You don't need one last talk. You need to cut the cord. Emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And yes, you'll still think about them. But thought is not bondage. You can witness a memory without becoming it. Reclaim that energy. Put it back into you, into your breath, into your boundaries, into becoming someone so rooted in self-worth that nothing external can shake it. They didn't break you. They revealed what was already aching to be healed. That's their gift, nothing more. Let them go, not with bitterness, but with clarity. They served their purpose. Now your life moves forward, without them. This isn't about hate, it's about truth. And the truth is, they were never your forever. They were your awakening. You were never meant to stay broken after they left. You were meant to become unbreakable. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion. The illusion that you needed someone else to be whole. The illusion that love had to come wrapped in anxiety, silence, or emotional breadcrumbs. You didn't lose a soulmate. You released a soul lesson. And in the silence that followed their absence, you met someone else. Someone more powerful, more grounded, more you than you've ever been. You found the version of yourself that doesn't beg to be chosen. The one who doesn't shrink just to fit inside someone else's limited capacity. The version that walks through the fire and keeps walking, even when it burns. That version, that's the real you. See, when they left, it felt like your world ended. But it didn't. The world you built around them ended. The one where your worth was measured by their attention. The one where your days were edited to fit their comfort. That world collapsing was not a tragedy. It was liberation. Now you're no longer chasing closure. You're chasing clarity. You're no longer searching for someone to complete you. You're showing up already whole. And maybe now, the nights are quieter, but the voice in your soul, it's louder. It's telling you, you were never too much. You just gave too much to someone who didn't know what to do with it. You're not broken, you're becoming. This pain didn't destroy you, it sculpted you. It stripped away the false versions of yourself that were built to survive, not to live. And now, you are rising, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with power. Because when you realize your peace is worth more than their presence, you stop waiting, you stop wishing, and you start walking. This is the moment your story changes, not because they come back, but because you don't want them to anymore. Not because they see your worth, but because you finally do. You didn't lose them, you gained you. And that right there is the real victory. If this video spoke to your soul, type "I choose myself" in the comments. Let's create a wave of healing below.